welcome to The Natural View. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I'm the content director of Whole Foods Magazine, and I'm joined as always by Todd Polley of 24 Stories Marketing. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Maggie. How are you?
Good to see you. Happy New Year. We have a very special guest today. We have Dr. Naji Abumrad. He is the professor of surgery at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, and he's also the chairman of Nirvana Water Sciences Scientific Advisory Board. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, yeah. So today we're going to talk about HMB, which I think people are really starting to gain awareness about. You've done a lot of research in this area, helping us to understand and spread the word. So for those who aren't familiar, can you just tell us about HMB first so that we're just oriented, and then what inspired you to do all this research and take your time learning more about this?
Well, HMB, actually the words HMB are abbreviations of the chemical name of the product. HMB, which stands for, sorry for the jargon here, hydroxymethylbutyrate, is a natural product that's found in proteins, and it's one of the breakdown products of leucine, an essential amino acid that we have to consume on a daily basis in order to be able to maintain our ability to fight infections and to produce the necessary proteins. This journey with me started almost 40 years ago, probably longer than both of you. You weren't born at that time.
I wish.
I had just graduated, did my training in surgery. And actually, the first patient I encountered that was referred to me was an important athlete in the community, a football player, a college football player, who was very well known, both locally and nationally, was involved in a motor vehicle accident. And he ended up in another hospital and with multiple fractures and multiple problems, and ended up with some severe complications. And he was referred to the institution I was at, and we took care of that young man. He must have been, well, at the time he was close to 6'5", 6'6", but just from the body habitus, you could tell that he has lost an incredible amount of of muscle mass during the 10-12 day period since he had the accident, and he had developed infections. To cut through the chase, we worked with this young man over a prolonged period of time, recovered, rehabilitated, went back into the community, and to the best of my understanding, he's still alive and doing extremely well until now. But the process took a long period of time, and that is what sort of stuck in my brain. What is it about trauma? And by the way, I'm a surgeon, so I cause trauma even when I'm helping people. What is it about trauma that leads to this significant weight loss? So I started digging into trying to understand this. At that time, just to give you a little bit of scientific background here, when you talk about muscle, it is the largest organ in the body. It constitutes approximately 40% of the total body weight. And there isn't another organ in the body that is that much in weight. And we only tend to think about it as important in some important functions, and it has several important functions. I will not dwell too much on them, but we all know it is extremely important in maintaining our ability to maintain a body posture, to be able to be mobile, to have the strength to go about doing our everyday life. And when we lose it, such as in condition of the athlete I just mentioned, or during illness, or during any type of chronic disease, then we tend to be more prone at developing more complications, more chronic diseases, get sort of significant changes and worsening of the chronic diseases, and in some situations can lead to death. And so at that time, there was a colleague of mine. We were both junior faculty members. We were competitors, and we decided to heck with competition. Let's start working together. He was at Iowa State University. His name is Dr. Stephen Nissen. And myself, I was at Vanderbilt at the time, and I continue to be at Vanderbilt. And we decided, rather than compete, let's form a collaborative team. And we worked over a period of around, I would say maybe 7, 8 years, hard work, looking at every single aspect of nutrients and what is it, and why do we lose muscle, and how do we lose muscle? And if I have to answer that question, think about muscle as like a bank account, just simplistically.
Mm-hmm.
Put $5 in a bank account and spend $5, you have zero balance. If you put $5 and spend $6, you are losing $1, and therefore you have to figure out a way how to make it up. If you put $3 and spend $5, you're still at a loss of $2. So muscle, if you think about it in a very simplistic way, it is a balance between what our body can produce every single day, that's called protein synthesis, and our body breaks down every single day, that's called protein breakdown. So the question was to us, how can we improve the synthesis, put more money in the bank, and decrease the losses, decrease protein breakdown? And therefore, we can get into a very positive balance. After, I can't tell you the exact dates, but 6, 7, 8 years, because this process is continuing until now. Mm-hmm. Every single day we look at it and we study it, and in a very scientific manner. And we came up and identified this molecule HMB, which is hydroxymethylbutyrate. So we said, does it exist in the body? And we found out that yes, on any single morning, and this is when you do your blood test after an overnight fast, we have small amounts of it. 5, whatever the unit that I'm just going to 5 to 7. Number one, can we produce it? So we spent quite a bit of time figuring out how to produce it. And then before you give it to humans, you have to test its safety. First of all, we patented it, so it is under patent. And then we had to measure its safety. And the way you do it, you start basically with taking culture in the lab, in a petri dish, in a small dish. You start working on it to see, is it effective? Does it actually improve protein synthesis? Does it actually prevent protein breakdown? And do you get improvement? We proved that. And then you want to say, okay, now I have a product. Can I give it safely? Is it safe to do? And this is where the FDA criteria become extremely important. You have to do studies to get what's called an IND, an investigational novel ingredient or drug, whatever it is. It's the same type of process. So you have to do specific studies, very well outlined, and we established its safety in animals. So we moved from the petri dish, we moved from the cultures of cells to the animals, and we have tested it in several species. And we found it to be extremely safe. And we found that whatever we saw in the dish, in the petri dish, it does indeed translate into the animals. That's when we went back to the FDA and said, allow us to test it in humans.
Mhm.
So we tested its safety in humans and found it to be extremely safe and found it to be equally effective. So that's when we started the whole process of developing the HMB. And then from there on, we tested it in various conditions, in young athletes, in older athletes, in women, in men, in various ethnic groups, in aging individuals, in individuals with various chronic diseases. Can it, let's take the average human being. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sort of taking the time with this, but if you take a human being from day one, a newborn comes to life, and you follow that human being during the normal progression of development, you will find that slowly but surely they will increase their muscle mass and muscle function. And if you were to test why, you will find that the balance between synthesis and breakdown is trending positively. And that peaks somewhere around 25 to the age of 30.
Let's see.
After that, we start naturally losing muscle. And that muscle loss, initially, it's maybe 0.5% a year, maybe less than 0.5% a year. But as we grow older, and mind you, we're still healthy, we start losing more and more, such that by the age of 50 and beyond, we are probably losing around 1% to 1.5%.
Okay.
Now, add on top of that a chronic disease, or obesity, or diabetes, or high blood pressure, or neurodegenerative problems, you name it, it doesn't matter. That escalates, that loss in muscle mass escalates. And when you talk about a loss in muscle mass, you talk about a loss in muscle function. And therefore, our ability to move around, to remain being able to carry out with everyday life activities is diminished, significantly diminished. We become more prone to progress in our diseases because of the other important effects of muscle on metabolism, energy, nutrient intake, etc. We start becoming more prone to develop osteoporosis, particularly in women, but men as well. We start being more prone to fall and develop fractures and develop the sequelae and can cause death. And that is why we have spent an enormous amount of time developing the proper studies. And by the way, all these studies were peer-reviewed, majority of which were funded by the National Institute of Health. So this is like any other rigorous scientific study. Study, the peer-reviewed by people we don't know who they are.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
they tell the NIH, yes, this is valid, fund them. And that's how we carried out the majority of our studies.
So once you,
the gold standard studies you've got backing this.
yeah. So once the product was developed, if I can fast forward just a bit here and talk a little bit about Nirvana Water Sciences. So I understand, you came up with the first water soluble form of HMB, correct? And put it in, married it with the natural spring water. I understand it comes from the Adirondack Mountains, which I'm determined to seek out these springs at one point, if you're willing to give up the information. It sounds amazing.
No, I will tell you how. But...
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, great. Yeah. So, but can you talk a little bit about that the reasons why you came up with, you did all this research, you came up with the product, you went through all the studies, and that delivery mechanism ended up being in spring water. Can you talk a little bit about any enhancements through that delivery mechanism, or basically what was the advantage of going that route with HMB?
Well, you're asking that simple question has several questions underneath it.
Sure. I'm sorry, I tend to do that.
No, I'm glad you're asking it. It's very important. Look, let me put a conflict of interest up front. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As I grow older, I have to look at what do people in my age group need
Sure.
to prevent the muscle wasting. Okay, that's a common thread that has carried me throughout. I've looked, and my colleague Steve Nissen and I have worked hard to look at all other conditions, but we were both getting older, and therefore we needed to make sure that we benefit from this technology.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a businessman. I am a scientist. I'm a surgeon. I'm a scientist. I'm an educator, and I had my National Institute of Health funded laboratory throughout all my academic career. And during that process, I can tell you HMB is important. But when it came to be developed, the salt of HMB, which is a calcium salt, is a powder. And, we all take supplements, and this is extremely important. And therefore, we ended up thinking, is there a way we can develop it so in a vehicle, in a way that we are able, because we depend on it every single day, that we can tag it along and it becomes a natural way of taking it on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And if I forget my capsule, I don't have to feel guilty. I can't forget the fact that I have to drink water.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And how did I get the Nirvana water? A colleague of mine, who happens to be the attorney for the company, introduced me to this. He said, you ought to come up. I did my training in Syracuse, New York, very early on. And so I was very close to the Adirondack, and I was extremely enamored by that part of the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
He told me about the aquifers in an area in Rome, New York, where it's coming out of the water. So I decided, you know what, let me go and look at it. And I was fascinated by the fact that you can just drink the most natural, tastiest water that I have ever experienced. And that's when we decided, you know what, we're going to develop the technology to make HMB, water soluble. And honestly, this is the way this relationship developed. And apparently there was a company in Nirvana, and here I am enamored by the water, and I, with my colleague and other scientists, developed the water soluble form, and therefore it became a natural marriage for the two, and that's how the two got together.
I appreciate it so much, because I'm such the pills are a problem for me. So something that's so easy to take like that, and like you said, we have so many to-dos, so just something that you're doing anyway makes it so easy and effortless, and then you're getting these benefits for long-term quality of life. So I'm down with that. But I wanted to ask you, you talked about, with the aging population and muscle degradation, and you talked about serious athletes, but can really a wider audience benefit from this? Like, is this something, I could be starting to take now as somebody who's not a serious athlete to get benefits?
The answer is absolutely yes. I have children who are one, around the age group that you are in, and they all take HMB. We have over the years, I mean, this journey started in the early 80s. And over the past 3 and some decades, we have been looking at the effects of HMB in various other modalities. Number one, the skeletal muscle being the largest and responsible for the largest amount of energy. I mean, even when we are sleeping, we're breathing, we are moving around, we're whatever it is, we are using our muscles. And during the day, we cannot survive without them. We also have found that HMB is extremely important in not only enhancing the muscle mass and function, but also in decreasing the amount of fat. So this is extremely important for all age groups, particularly in, I mean, as you know, the world and the United States is having a fat and obesity epidemic. Mm-hmm. That decreases the amount of fat in the body. Extremely important. Why is it that we don't go out and exercise, or we don't go out and take a long walk? Because, it's cold, it is not really that fun. And when I go out, I come back, I have muscle aches, I have cramps. We have found out in athletes that the amount of fatigue, not as reported by athletes, but also when we measure the amount of lactate in their blood after an exercise, if they're not taking HMB, doing one exercise, the level would be extremely high. When they are taking HMB, the levels are much, much lower. And they tell you that we can do more function. So you combine all of these, and then I can tell you the effect that we have seen on cognitive function. And the question is it the effect directly on the brain, or is it the effect on the muscle, and the muscle keeps us more alive and better quality of life? I think all age groups can take it. Now, I need to put a cautionary note here. We have not fully explored the effect of HMB on children. Mm. We have done it in select studies, but we are not at this stage proposing it to be given to children, even though we have safety studies on those in both animals and in humans. But any human being above the age of 18, as defined, as adulthood, can take this, and they will significantly benefit from this.
Just going a little bit deeper into what you just said, I understand, you've done a lot of studies on athletes, and there are benefits there. And as you just said, there are benefits for everyone taking HMB. Have you ever had a patient or someone ask you, or just voice the opinion, look, I'm knocking the door to 50, but if you back up a little bit and say, 30s, 40, early 40s, and they say, I understand what you're saying. There are benefits, long-term benefits. I have all this other stuff to worry about. I understand sometime in the future, I'll start losing muscle at a higher rate. Do I really need to take this now? And I'm just wondering, what's the message there? Because it seems like we live in such an immediate health gratification society where everyone comes up, we're recording this in January, and everyone comes up with a resolution, and already the gyms are starting to get a little more open than they were a week ago because people fall off. So how do you encourage people to start this habit and really plan for better muscular health 30 years down the road?
Well, in a lot of ways, what you folks are doing is part of the important message that we have to generate to the population at large. I mean, the next question is, as you had suggested, should a 30-year-old or a 35-year-old in good health be taking HMB? While the theoretical answer is yes, and they're not interested in being athletic, they're not interested, they just want to go about their own daily life. You know, theoretically, I can say yes. Realistically, if they don't, there's no harm there. But if they do, there will be a small cumulative effect over time that they can notice in their daily life, doing things that normally they don't, you know, they sort of avoided doing. They can do things in their normal life that will make them feel better. But is it a must? No, it's not.
Well, even like you mentioned earlier with the athletes, and that they feel less fatigue, and they had, you know, the endurance is a little bit better. And I think, like, sometimes I'm just running about my day, like cleaning the house, and I'm like, that was a major workout in and of itself. So just to feel more energized. I mean, I think so many people, you're kind of running ragged every day. So any help you can get is a positive. And then to know that it's kind of money in the bank for later in life is
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I hate to bring this up, but this is something that, I mean, I've had to take care of my grandchildren at one point over a period of 3 days. And that is the time when I appreciated what mothers do. The amount of hard work that they do, we don't appreciate. And I mean, they are constantly on the move. And by the end of the second day, I thought to myself, how can a mother do that day in and day out? I don't know. And I was taking care of 2 children.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We could use the helping hand and the cognitive too. We'll take that as well. But I'm wondering, you mentioned, like, when you talked about growth hormone, and you mentioned that there were some negative effects. Are there any downsides or side effects from HMB?
To the best of our knowledge, the answer is absolutely no. I mean, on any daily basis, there are, I estimate, and I'm not really sure if I can be absolutely correct, but there are approximately 60 million people around the world that use HMB on a daily basis, and maybe more. And we have never, ever encountered one, you know, adverse effect. And we have monitored this quite carefully. And knock on wood, we have not. We've not encountered that.
Yeah, well, that's great news. And, you know, can I just say as an aside, it's rare that we speak to someone who has spent his or her life's work pursuing something like this. And then here we are at the end of it in terms of a product cycle. You know, you went back, you you discovered the benefits of HMB. You went through all of the science. You found the perfect way to deliver that to folks. And so as far as a product life cycle, here we are, it's available. People can order it, people can buy it. So now I'm kind of curious, you know, as far as, you don't seem like a person who will then sit back on his laurels and congratulate themselves. You seem pretty hungry. Like there's probably a next step here, whether it's something else with the spring water, something else with HMB. So I'm just wondering what's next on your horizon in terms of science?
Well, in terms of science, I mean, you know, as a scientist, I have been a clinician and a scientist at the same time, and maintained a well-funded laboratory, as I mentioned earlier. As a scientist, everything you do in science is towards improving human life, towards impacting other people's lives. Otherwise, there is no absolute abstract science. Even the most abstract concept in the world takes time to prove it, and then we find its utility in human life. What's the purpose of sitting on one's laurels? Okay.
Right.
When we disappear, we may be remembered for 3 months, 6 months. We're lucky if we get remembered for 9 months. it is what we leave behind. How do we impact not only other people's lives, but our loved ones as well? And as we are alive, we impact our own health. That's basically. So I'm spending whatever is left of my life looking at what other products other than HMB can be infused with water, now that water is probably one of the best vehicles of delivering these nutrients, nutraceuticals, supplements, whatever you want to call them. And maybe in combination with HMB or separate from HMB. And trust me, there is an incredible amount of discovery taking place every single day that I've gone through that process, through its ups and downs. And trust me, it wasn't purely, completely upward. There were ups and downs. And if I can help develop another product, bring it to bear, bring it to the community, having an impact, I'd be a happy camper.
Great.
That's excellent. Well, we look forward to what you bring forward next and what Nirvana Water Sciences comes up with. We'll be staying tuned for more. And so we've really talked big picture, but I just wanted to talk one more like practical thing before we part, because so we've talked about all the benefits that we can get, which, I want all these benefits in my life. So, when you're drinking the HMB in the water form, how much should you be drinking in a daily basis? Is there anything like in terms of when you should time it to get benefits? I just want to make sure I get these benefits.
Let me take you back one step to the science of it. When we did the science and how can it be the most effective? As I mentioned earlier, whatever unit we measure the amount of HMB in your blood in the morning, and you're not on it, by the way, we're starting from fresh. It's 5 to 7, maybe 8. To get an effect, we have to raise it above 80, between 80 and 120, 130. And we found out that anywhere from 2 to 3 grams a day, if you divide them equally, you take them as a capsule. Well, you have to remember taking it in the morning, 8 hours later, and another 8 hours. Sometimes we're human, we forget. But water, you have to drink it. You have to drink it to maintain survival. It's part of our daily survival chores that we have to do to stay alive and function. And therefore, if we put it in water and drink it, this allows you to maintain your blood levels at the quite effective level. And you're not going to say, I can only drink water at 8 in the morning and at 12 at noon. You drink whenever you feel thirsty. And that keeps your blood levels elevated. And that's when you get the most effect.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add and leave us with? Anything we didn't touch on that you feel like our viewers should know?
No, I mean, any questions, any viewers have any questions, just holler. We'll be more than happy to show them the data, to show them the science, the peer-reviewed science, the patents, anything that is pertinent to HMB and to future products that are coming down the pike.
Great.
Thank
This
you
is
very much for your
interesting.
time.
It's a lot of new information. I learned a lot. Find your
Yeah.
story inspiring.
Well, good. And thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us. We'll have the contact information and the website up with the article so people can reach out for more information.
I appreciate it. You have a nice day. Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.